Hello. We're back to Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol that was first published in England in the early 1840s. Tonight, you're going to hear Bonnie Scheidel reading Stave 4. This stave is about Ebenezer Scrooge's visit with the ghost of Christmas yet to come. I found this stave very frightening when I was a little girl. I didn't really understand that Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol as a parable. Tonight we're going to find out what might happen to Ebenezer Scrooge if he doesn't change his ways. May God bless us all as we walk with Ebenezer Scrooge towards his judgment.
As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground toward him. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knees, for in the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in deep black garments, which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. But for this, it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night, and separated from the darkness by which it was surrounded. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. "I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come," asked Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed downward with his hand. Although well used to ghostly company by this time, Scrooge feared the silent shape so much that his legs trembled beneath him, and he found that he could hardly stand when he prepared to follow it. "Ghost of the future," he exclaimed, "I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear your company. Lead on," said Scrooge. "The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know." The phantom moved away as it had come towards him. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up and carried him along. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them and encompass them of its own act. But there they were, in the heart of it, on the exchange, amongst the merchants who conversed in groups, looked at their watches and so forth, as Scrooge had seen them often. Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. "No," said a great man with a monstrous chin. "I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead." "What has he done with his money?" asked a red-faced gentleman with a nose like the gills of a turkey cock. "I haven't heard," said the man with the large chin, yawning again. "He hasn't left it to me, that's all I know." This pleasantry was received with a general laugh. "It's likely to be a very cheap funeral," said the same speaker, "for upon my life I don't know of anyone to go to it." Another laugh. They left the busy scene and went into an obscure part of the town where Scrooge had never penetrated before, although he knew its bad repute. The whole quarter reeked with crime, filth, and misery. Far in this den of infamous resort, there was a low-browed, beetling shop, where old iron, rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. Sitting in amongst the wares was a gray-haired rascal, nearly 70 years of age. Scrooge and the phantom came into the presence of this man, just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop. But she had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in too, and she was closely followed by a man in faded black, who was no less startled by the sight of him than they had been upon recognition of each other. After a short period of blank astonishment, they all burst into a laugh. The man in faded black began to produce his plunder. It was not extensive. A seal or two, a pencil case, a pair of sleeve buttons, and a brooch of no great value were all. The second woman was next. Sheets and towels, 2 old-fashioned silver teaspoons, and a few boots. "And now undo my bundle, Joe," said the first woman. Joe dragged out a large and heavy roll of some dark stuff. "Bed curtains," said Joe. "You don't mean to say you took them down, rings and all, with him lying there?" "Yes, I do," said the woman. "Why not? If you wanted to keep them after he was dead, the wicked old screw, why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have had someone to look after him, instead of lying gasping out his last, alone, by himself." Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror. It was as though they were obscene demons, marketing the corpse itself. Spirit, said Scrooge, shuddering from head to foot. I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heavens, what is this? He recoiled in terror, for the scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bed, a bare uncurtained bed, on which, beneath a ragged sheet, there lay something covered up, which, though it was dumb, announced itself in awful language. A pale light fell straight upon the bed, and upon it, plundered and bereft, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this man. Spirit, Scrooge cried, this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson. Trust me. Let us go. The ghost conducted him through several streets familiar to his feet. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and children seated around the fire. Quiet, very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in sewing. And he took a child and set him in the midst of them. Where had Scrooge heard those words? He had not dreamed them. The boy must have read them out, and as he and the Spirit crossed the threshold. The mother laid her work on the table. Your father will be coming home. It must be near his time. Past it, rather, Peter answered, shutting up his book. But I think he walks a little slower than he used to these last few evenings, Mother. They were very quiet again. At last she said, and in a steady, cheerful voice that only faltered once, I have known him to walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder, very fast indeed. But he was very light to carry, she resumed, intent upon her work, and his father loved him so that it was no trouble. And there is your father at the door. She hurried out to meet him, and Bob and his comforter came in. His tea was ready for him on the hob, and they all tried who should help him to it first. You went there today, Robert? Asked his wife. Yes, my dear, returned Bob. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him I would talk there on a Sunday. My little child, cried Bob. My little child. He broke down all at once. He couldn't help it. If he could have helped it, he and his child would have been farther apart, perhaps, than they were. Poor Bob thought a little and composed himself. He kissed his wife. He was reconciled to what had happened, and he talked on as though he were quite happy. They all drew about the fire and talked, the girls and mother working still. Bob told them of the extraordinary kindness that Mr. Scrooge's nephew, who, meeting him in the street that day, and seeing that he looked just a little down, you know, said Bob, inquired what had happened to distress him. On which, said Bob, for he is the pleasantest spoken gentleman, I told him, I am hardly sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit, he said, and hardly sorry for your good wife. I'm sure he's a good soul, said Mrs. Cratchit. You would be sure of it, my dear, returned Bob, if you saw and spoke to him. Spirit of Tiny Tim, thy childish essence was from God. Spectre, said Scrooge, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what man that was whom we saw lying dead. The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him, as before, until they reached an iron gate, a churchyard. Here, then, the wretched man, whose name he had now to learn, lay underneath the ground. It was a worthy place, walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds, the growth of vegetation's death, not life. The Spirit stood amongst the graves and pointed down to one. Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, said Scrooge, answer me one question. Man's courses will foreshadow certain ends, to which, if persevered in, they must lead, said Scrooge. But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Are these the shadows of things that will be, or are they the shadows of things that may be only? The Spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and, following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave the name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Am I that man who lay upon the bed, he cried, upon his knees? This finger pointed from the grave to him and back again. No, Spirit, oh no, no, the finger still was there. Spirit, he cried, tight clutching at its robe, hear me, I'm not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been, but for this intercourse. Why show me this if I am past all hope? Good Spirit, he pursued, as down upon the ground he fell before it. Your kind nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me that I may yet change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. The spirit's hand trembled. I will honor Christmas in my heart and keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall thrive within me. Oh, tell me that I may sponge away the writing on this stone. In his agony, he caught the spectral hand. It sought to free itself, but he was strong in his entreaty and detained it. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. Holding up his hands in one last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrank, collapsed, and dwindled down into the bedpost.
Hey, it's Daniel back at the editing desk again. Thank you so much for watching Stave 4 and Charles Dickens as read by Bonnie. I want to take a moment and talk to you about Marty. She's one of the key folks in our Blessing Box program. She takes all the flyers that come in her mailbox every week. She lays them out on the table. She figures out the best deals for cereal and soup and pasta and all these sorts of other staples that we put out for folks in the community to come by and take as they need. It's a great program. This is an important time of year for it, and we'd love to keep it going through the winter. So head over to the website, stpaulsanglican.com. There's a link in the description below. Please like and subscribe to the channel as well, but head over to the website and think about helping us out for a little bit. There's a donate link there, and we'd really appreciate it. Tune in on Christmas Eve to this channel, the St. Paul's Media channel. We have our Christmas Eve services. We'll be live streaming those. They're amazing, and they're always a great service. So please check that out. And after that, we have Stave 5 for you. If you want to feel good at Christmas, those are a couple of things that will help you with that. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in a few days.